Hey, now it's Brace for Impact, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm going solo on that ass, but it is still the same. We're talking TNA Wrestling, and we got a big Rebellion pay-per-view coming up this Sunday. Well, I hope it's still going on after what Joe Hendry did on this past week's WrestleMania. A lot of people are saying the company's going out of business now after that. So we'll get into that a little bit. We'll talk about some of the narrative surrounding what happened with Joe Hendry's week at WrestleMania and, of course, NXT. We'll talk about the pay-per-view. We got some big matches. We got some matches that literally nobody cares about. We'll talk about the crowd size, all that. And then, of course, we had an interesting episode of iMPACT last night, to say the least. I'm not sure how I feel about it, and I don't think that they did anything to get people excited for Sunday, which is kind of the MO for TNA. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the Joe Hendry talk. Actually, before we do that, you're probably wondering why this is just live on YouTube and on Twitter for free. And that's because the Patreon has been paused. Don't worry, Patreon people. The audio will go to Patreon no matter what. But I was like, well, since I'm going live, I'm just gonna make it live for everybody. And since I kind of paused billing on the Patreon because this is the last episode of Brace for Impact before I go on hiatus. So this will be the last episode of Brace for Impact, and then on Sunday will be the last episode of Mike and JD Show. And then we're going to go on an indefinite hiatus, which I explained a couple of different times. But as you guys know, I'm traveling from Hawaii into South Carolina and having a lot of stops in between. So we'll be gone for probably 2 months, maybe more. I'm hoping to be back by Slammiversary timeframe, maybe like the week before or the week after. I'm not really too sure. And it might not... this may extend into August. It just depends on where everything's at and what my life looks like at the time. As most of you guys know, like I kind of run the whole deal. Like JD's been a great partner, and I love JD. And I don't think I'd ever podcast again with another partner. But as far as like the day-to-day operations of the podcast, it's pretty much me. Now that JD, it's been me because JD has like 3 jobs and was getting his master's degree and all that stuff. He's actually able to help out now more, but I'm not available. So we have to go on a little bit of a hiatus, but hopefully we'll be back in due time. So I see the chats blowing up. Yeah, get your chats in. Let me know how you guys feel. We'll talk about Joe Hendry's big week. And I have some mixed feelings about WrestleMania. And I know I talked about it on the Mike and JD show, but this is like a TNA specific podcast. And JD and I had like a bit of a dust up on the air, which is always good for ratings, by the way. I love getting into arguments on the air. I think that's great content. So it's good to have, conflicting opinions and differing opinions, and none of them are wrong or bad. It's just like the way you perceive it. The way I look at things as it relates to TNA, I always look at it like relative to TNA's size, right? And relative to what TNA is today. I think a lot of people, when they see what's going on with TNA and WWE, they automatically, their brain reverts back to the Dixie Carter owned TNA from like 10 years ago. And how damaging it would be to that company. Well, this is a completely different company. This is a company begging for exposure, and I think that was the word probably the most appropriate term that Dave Meltzer used on his Observer this week was the TNA is begging for exposure. They are begging for any way to get themselves noticed by any means necessary, and part of that is partnering with WWE, and that has been, as far as their business goes, that has been a positive. They're spending a lot less money on talent. They released a lot of people. They have a lot of NXT talent coming in as scabs, essentially. I think that's the word I think Rovert used. And so I didn't agree with that at first, but I think I'm there now, right? After I see somebody else got released, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So their overhead is probably lower now, but they're bringing in more revenue. Like the app subscription numbers are up. We don't get pay-per-view numbers. I talked to Dave a couple weeks ago about the Genesis number, and he didn't get it. So we don't get that metric, and we don't get the app subscription metric, and we don't get the ratings metric. So the only thing that we can do is like look with our eyes and see how many people are coming to the shows. And that's usually a barometer of how well a company is doing. And so the only metric that we do have access to is seeing that there's a lot less empty seats now than there used to be. And the arenas have gotten bigger. There's more people there. And, because of that, it's safe to assume that they're taking in a lot more money. So, the WWE relationship has been a positive in that sense. And so when you're like an Anthem exec, you're a bean counter, you're working in their finance department, you're looking at that and it's like, okay, like who cares if our top star goes on to WrestleMania with the TNA title, loses in 3 minutes in not a very competitive match. Although Joe Hendry did get a couple of moves in, but let's be honest, it wasn't all that competitive, right? At no point was Randy Orton in danger of losing, right? So not a very competitive match. And then afterwards, Randy Orton RKOs him again and makes fun of his spin and his look and all of that. If you're somebody that's not like a wrestling lifer, that's not a wrestling historian, that hasn't really seen the way the wrestling business has gone down for 100 years, and you're just a guy who's like counting money, you can see like, who cares, right? And at the end of the day, I think a lot of people on the WWE side and a lot of people on the TNA side are very much like, who cares? TNA got exposure, right? Like WWE's like, well, look, this is how we get you on the TV. We have to bury you, right? And TNA is like, okay, no problem. I think recently, Ariel, their former creative guy, passed on one of those opportunities. I think Joe Hendry, like it came out in Fightful that Joe Hendry was supposed to be in a match on like Raw or something like that, or on the main roster, and he was going to lose, but that was going to lead to a program with The Miz, and he had turned that down. And we'll look at him now. Where's he at? He's not there anymore. So another opportunity arises. WWE wants Joe Hendry on TV. They offer him the spot. I think if you're TNA, like if you're Delirious or you're Tommy Dreamer or you're Carlos Silva, you're like, well, look what happened to the last guy that turned him down. Now, I'm not saying there was a connection, but I'm just saying it's kind of weird, right? That Ariel got released kind of shortly after that happened. So I think one could reasonably assume that maybe there was a little bit of a connection, maybe like not like a direct correlation, but that was maybe one of the reasons why that guy is no longer here. But you're probably looking at that and it's like, okay, if we pass this opportunity, right? The opportunity is, okay, you get to go on WrestleMania, you get to have your title belt. You get to get that big pop, which everybody knew it would be a big pop because everywhere Hendry goes, people get excited to see him. They like the song, right? They like the character. And then he gets to be in there with Randy Orton, and there's probably whatever, like 60,000 in the arena and probably like 4 million when it's all said and done watching it. And then of course, all the clips, like millions and millions of clips on YouTube and, Instagram and all that stuff, which TNA very much covets. So like, that's the trade-off. We get to have all that exposure, but you got to lose in 3 minutes. And if you're Joe Hendry, who you very clearly his ultimate goal is to get to WWE and be a big star, you have to take it, right? And if you're TNA, you're looking at it, it's like, how does this help us? And so you got to try to figure out a way that this helps us. And I think if you're an old school guy like Paul Heyman, and I think Dave brought this up in his Observer, Paul Heyman stopped sending his guys to WWE because he was like, they were going on there and they were losing. He's like, us losing on this show doesn't really help us out. That was also in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, wins and losses were a lot more important back then. I think that, and I don't like this, by the way, I wish they were more important. I think if this were AEW, this would really tank TNA. Like if Joe Hendry went on AEW television and lost to fucking Edge in like 3 minutes, because that fan base covets wins and losses so much more than the WWE fan base. I think it would be it would be worse if that happened. But because it was on WWE and the WWE fans really just like the entrances. They like the characters. And for Joe Hendry, they like his music, they like his entrance, they like his spin and his smile. And they like his stomp clap, right? Whatever happens after that, they don't really care about. And it's weird. Like, will this end up helping TNA? Well, I do think that Joe Hendry, given all the media that he's done this week, I think Joe Hendry is actually more famous and more popular now than he was, and he's the TNA champion. Does it mean that anybody's going to take the TNA title seriously? No, but guess what? They didn't really take it seriously to begin with. WWE fans don't take that title seriously. They don't take TNA seriously. And now TNA has admitted they don't really take themselves seriously. They're just happy to get their title on television and get themselves a little bit of exposure. And that's all this was. Is it going to tank the company? No. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Rebellion's about, like, if it's not sold out already, it's going to be sold out soon. I think they did sell out the initial ticket set that they had on sale, and it looks like I think they've opened up some more seats. Somebody could correct me on that, but I get the feeling they've opened up some more seats. And so that leads to it. Now, Slammiversary ticket sales, they didn't really skyrocket, right? But that's also in July, and not a single match has been announced. So, but people want to use that as like, okay, well, TNA dead, TNA LOL, killed their title, killed. Look, TNA is not a promotion that people are taking seriously, as far as we have the best wrestlers and the biggest show and all this and that. Everybody kind of sees what TNA is now, and TNA finally sees themselves as that. The last person that really took the company as serious, that really tried to compete, was Dixie Carter, and you kind of see where she's at now, right? And what happened with that. They tried to stay competitive with WWE, and it didn't really exactly work out for them. I think if 10 years ago, if WWE said, hey, we want Bobby Roode to come on to WrestleMania and lose to The Undertaker in 3 minutes, Dixie Carter would have said no, right? Dixie Carter was really the last president of the company that took the company serious as far as the way it's being presented on television, right? So TNA is what they are now. They're a company dying for any type of exposure and any type of affection from WWE fans. They're signing a lot of people off the WWE scrap heap. They're using a lot of WWE talent that are active, right? They got Ethan Page on the show. They got 3 women on the Countdown show. They got I think they got 2 tag teams on in a fatal 4-way. It's an NXT heavy show. And then now Sean Waltman's coming in and to be a part of one of the matches. And they have, apparently they're teasing a mega star coming in. Now mega star, I don't know about all that. We'll see. I think Eli Drake's nickname is the mega star, but when these surprise teases are happening, you guys know my rule. That is the rule. That is the rule for Brace for Impact when it relates to TNA. Lowered expectations. So people are saying that it's going to be a mega star. I think everybody would want AJ Styles really from the main roster, unless you're getting John Cena or Roman Reigns or CM Punk. The guy that everybody wants to see come back to TNA is AJ. AJ has a bus, right? He's one of the few people that has a bus. In fact, the Good Brothers were on their podcast and kind of made jokes about the fact that they talked AJ into getting a bus, so that way they had a way to ride the bus, right? So I think lower them expectations. I don't think anybody from the main roster is coming, to be honest with you. I think they kind of backed off on that a little bit, but King of the North is here. WrestleMania watcher King of the North. He is rating matches, I saw on Twitter, but it said Mike the Miz on his bus. Yeah, so that was the thing, right? So Ariel turned down an opportunity for Joe Hendry to go on WWE before and lose, and that it would lead to the Miz coming on to TNA. He turned that down. He is now fired. Well, Joe Hendry was on WrestleMania, lost in 3 minutes, in probably the greatest moment of his life, and is teasing that somebody with a bus is going to be on Rebellion. And I get the feeling that it's going to be the Miz, and TNA is getting thrown under that fucking bus. So, but that's you accept the love that you feel you deserve, right? And that's the love that TNA feels that they deserve, right? That the whole movie Perks of Being a Wallflower. TNA doesn't mind getting treated like this. They think it's good, right? And by all accounts, all the wrestlers are tweeting positive things. WWE side, TNA side, all the execs are happy about it. Len Asper was tweeting about it. Everybody loves this thing, except for the hardcore fans like me that have been watching wrestling his whole life and has seen what this has done to other companies. And so I've been making fun of it nonstop. I'll be honest, whenever he got hit with the RKO, I said that was perfect. 3 minutes, perfect. But that's because that's where I see Joe Hendry. That's just like Joe Hendry on WWE television. That's what I see him as kind of coming in, doing a smile and getting his ass kicked, right? But that's not much different than the way that he's been presented on TNA television for most of his career, right? Like I was, banging the drum and banging the table that if they really want to make money with Joe Hendry, they need to treat him as if he were John Cena and he should be like Superman, right? He hasn't ever been able to get that next gear as far as his character. He likes to be silly. He likes to jack off, right? He likes to have the shit-eating grin. He likes to do the memes. He doesn't want to be a badass. There's nothing about him that's badass. Although, like in real life, he could probably kick some people's asses. Like he was an actual, like legit, like wrestling guy in England. He actually like joined in some tournaments. He's actually like got a judo background and a wrestling background. He's like a tough dude. So he like legitimately is kind of a badass, but he doesn't know how to get his personality to play that character. The guy never gets mad. Every time he does, nobody takes it seriously. And so that's just the character that he is. And so everybody that's coming out against this thing and is railing against it, saying that, this does nothing for TNA. This is making TNA look like a joke. I'm here to tell you that's what TNA is, right? That's just what they like to be. They want to be the little brother to WWE because that's what's making them money right now. And they're happy being that. So for everybody that's out there getting mad about this, especially the ones that don't watch TNA, I don't know what you're getting mad about. TNA likes this, so let them be happy. And like the TNA fans like this. They like the fact that WWE is validating the people that they like, even though they're getting, beat on television, right? On main roster, like NXT, TNA is presented like fairly strong, right? TNA is presented fairly strong in NXT because WWE wants everybody to be lower level, like their main roster. Everything has to be lower level than their main roster. The big Worlds Collide, I think there's going to be WWE talent on there, but it's being presented as like NXT level, right? And so that's the only way they can present it strong is when it's in relation to NXT. But anything that's WWE main roster level has to be squashed, right? It has to be pushed down. That's why Joe Hendry, Royal Rumble, he's in and out in just a couple of minutes. And he only got offensive maneuvers on guess who? Fucking Miz, right? Like he only like the Miz was the only one that sold for him. So get ready for the Miz on TNA, by the way. If anybody from the main roster is coming over, it's the Miz. And I will be on hiatus during that time. So that's probably a good thing for me. And it's probably a good thing for this podcast because I don't really want to watch the Miz on TV every week and I don't really want to talk about him. One of the reasons why I stopped podcasting about WWE in 2017 was A, the show was awful, but B is because I just didn't like to see the Miz. And I don't like his yes kicks. Just like the fact that he can't throw, like I can go out in my garage right now with my heavy bag and throw a stronger kick than he throws, right? And probably not hurt somebody. So, and he's been wrestling for 20 years. And I know that my 42-year-old ass with bad knees could go out there and throw better kicks than the Miz, right? And he's a much better athlete than me, but he just can't throw a kick. But yet he still does them, right? So for everybody that's getting mad about this, I would say don't be mad about it because TNA likes this. This is what TNA wants. TNA wants the leftovers from WWE. Like very clearly, look at the Ultimate X match, right? They had this, not a surprise entrant, but they were like revealing entrants over the course of weeks, and they're bringing back Sidney Akeem, and he debuted at Unbreakable, and he fucking sucks. He's like out there wrestling in a t-shirt, like super out of shape. He can do a back handspring, and that's about it. But his only appeal is the fact that he used to be on NXT television, right? And they needed a spot for another former WWE guy, Matt Cardona, and he just happened to have an availability, so they threw him in the Ultimate X match. He's got no business being in an Ultimate X match, but he used to be in WWE, so he's there, right? And now you got newest WWE employee Vikingo. He's on that show, right? They're trying to do anything they can to appeal to the WWE audience. They have totally decided not to be original when it comes to their roster, right? I will say, and I'm going to get to the Impact review in a little bit. This week's episode of Impact was very original in its presentation for what they're doing, despite the fact that they were using a lot of former WWE talent. Like, unoriginal with a lot of their stars, but like the presentation was, I would say, pretty original with a lot of the feuds that they're doing, specifically Mike Santana and Ali. Of course, you had the Hardy Compound stuff, and which was we'll get to that. And Steve Macklin and Eric Young, right? So like you have a lot of that stuff that nobody else is doing right now, and probably for a good thing, but nobody else is doing it. So TNA does have a little bit of stuff, but for the most part, you take a look at their roster up and down, you can tell they're just trying to appeal to WWE fans. And guess what? And I hate to admit this, because I appreciate originality so much, and I'm in my 49er gear right now because the NFL draft is today. I like the idea of getting somebody from the indies or somebody from wrestling school, bringing them to you, and then you developing them and making them into your own, and them becoming a part of your identity for your company. Much like when, God love him, Jeff Jarrett, whenever he started TNA, he went around to the independents and he started bringing in all this young talent and developing them, giving them exposure over time. And then they ultimately ended up becoming big stars. And they're still, to this day, identified with TNA. AJ Styles today is still getting like TNA chants, right? He's always going to be identified with TNA. Samoa Joe, always going to be identified with TNA. To an extent, like Christopher Daniels, right? I know we just had that Unbreakable tournament, so they're like fresh in my mind, right? Bobby Roode, Cowboy James Storm, right? All these cats, Amazing Red. They're all identified with TNA because like that's where they got their first exposure. They were groomed, and we saw them grow up, and we saw them become like amazing pro wrestlers, right? We don't got that right now because what they're trying to do is recruit people that just lost their job, that are already TV ready, that already have exposure, that are always going to be identified. It really takes a long time to get the stink of WWE failure off of you, right? Macklin was able to do it. He's an exception. And so that's kind of what they're looking at. So, so when I saw what happened with Joe Hendry, and like, he's talking about it, like, this is the greatest, like, it was the greatest night of his life. So like, I can't get mad at him for being happy. Right. And I can't be mad at TNA for being happy. And I can't sit here and say that this isn't going to ultimately help TNA, because I get the feeling that that's going to lead to more people buying tickets for the Sunday. And in fact, I'm like correct about that. And I was correct about that. It hasn't moved anything for like 3 months from now, but in the interim, like right now, in the immediate future, and we'll go to Dobby the Brain Heenan, who is the resident ticket guy. So they're going to be around 5K at Rebellion. I'm pumping the brakes at 5K. Okay. I'm pumping the brakes on 5K. I'm guessing, because these are general admission, I'm guessing it's probably like 3 to 4. But if they get to 5, they announce a number 5, then that's a fucking huge success for TNA. They have not been to 5,000 since the Dixie Carter era. Dobby says 100 levels sold out, only 3 floor seats left. Those floor seats are fucking expensive too. They're like $250. So this is going to be the biggest gate in TNA history, and it's about to get crushed by Slammiversary, which is already well over 2,000, and then it's gonna get to 5 for sure. He goes on to say 200 level was open, and site says they're all almost gone. So it is what it is. Like, I think when it comes to the character of Joe Hendry and the presentation of Joe Hendry, we have to, a lot like us older cats that have been watching pro wrestling for a long time, that read, Death of the Territories, that watched the fall of WCW, that watched the fall of ECW, that know the history of Jim Crockett buying the UWF and the way the UWF guys were treated when they came over to Crockett, which was like totally killed any momentum that they had. We got to get that out of our brains when we're talking about what's going on with WWE and TNA, because, and I don't think that the Taz rule applies here, right? I don't see that at all. Because of the type of attraction that Joe Hendry is. Every time Joe Hendry goes on a WWE television, whether it be NXT or main roster, whether it be pay-per-view or whatever, And even when they throw him out in less than 60 seconds, which is what they did on the NXT Battle Royal, or whether he gets thrown out in less than 5 minutes in the Royal Rumble, or whether he gets beat in 3 minutes at WrestleMania, for whatever reason, he comes back stronger because everybody knows it's fake, right? Like, they know he's not, like, nobody really wins those matches. And I wish that people took wins and losses more seriously, but TNA and WWE just, their fans don't care about that stuff. They just don't. I wish they did. AEW and New Japan fans do. It's a different audience, right? They do care about that stuff. These fan bases don't fucking care. And I think it sucks, but they don't. So I wish that Joe Hendry losing in 3 minutes tanked the whole thing, because that way it would validate my opinions of pro wrestling. I'm just telling you, it's not going to. It's not going to have a negative impact, and probably slightly positive. Now Dave Meltzer, and I got a lot of respect for Dave. I was reading the Observer. He said that if wins and losses didn't matter, why didn't they do that to one of their own people, like Rusev coming in, or like Aleister Black coming in? And I think that I understand his point. Those are completely different attractions. Rusev's attraction is a bad motherfucker, and so is Aleister Black. Joe Hendry as an attraction is an entrance, a clap, and a song, and a smile. What he does after that, nobody cares about. So people like to see Rusev kick people's asses. Nobody pays any money to see Joe Hendry beat up anybody. It's like once the bell rings, nobody cares anymore, right? And I think that sucks. And because of that, he's gonna have a long shelf life as a performer, but he's gonna have a very short shelf life as a world champion. In fact, once he's done with TNA, that man's never winning a world title belt ever again. This is his only opportunity, and he's making the best of it. So God love him. But so I think that it's all completely different. Now, people have brought up John Cena lost to The Undertaker. Okay, John Cena was already a pretty well-established guy, and then he goes and makes movies, and he comes back, so it's completely different. Then people say, well, Daniel Bryan lost to Sheamus in a minute. That fucking sucked, and everybody was rightly outraged about that. That made Bryan Danielson much stronger, and that he ended up getting support after that. But that wasn't because WWE booked it that way on purpose. Like, they did that because that's what they saw Daniel Bryan as. They saw him as a geek. They did it to him, and then he ends up getting over in spite of it. Right? So like, that wasn't done on purpose. That was an accident. So I don't think that these things are comparable. So I don't think WWE's like on purpose beating him in 3 minutes because they know that he is going to come back even stronger because of. I don't think that. I think they just see him as kind of a, like, hey, he's a funny entrance, a guy, a geek. Randy Orton wanted to work with him, so we'll make it happen. We'll give him 3 minutes, and then he could take the exposure and get to tell everybody, hey, I was on WrestleMania. I got a WrestleMania moment, and then he's gonna be able to make money off of that. I think that's what that is. I don't think that they're like, hey, we're really gonna make this kid. Let's beat him in 3 minutes. Like, that's not what they're trying to do, right? WWE wants everybody to look like they're beneath them. That's outside. Right. So that's what this is. Okay. I think I've talked too much about the Joe Hendry situation. But I just see a lot of people looking at it like in a way that probably shouldn't be looking at it. Right. And I think they're taking it way too seriously. And I get it because I take the shit seriously too. And I wish and TNA is making me not take this shit seriously, which makes it me more apathetic to what they're doing, to be honest with you. But which is probably why I need to take a couple months off. Let's get into the full lineup for TNA Rebellion. Coming up, full lineup for TNA Rebellion. Let's go ahead. We'll start at the bottom and then we'll work our way up to the top. So let's see. On the countdown to Rebellion, we got. Actually, I don't think this is on the countdown. We got a Walk with Elijah open challenge. So there's going to be an open challenge for Elijah. And guys, I see some people dropping some names out there. This is on the countdown show. So let's go ahead and hit the button again. It's probably going to be Tommy Dreamer or somebody, or it's going to be somebody that used to be on WWE that never drew any money. That's going to get beat by Elijah because they see Elijah as as one of their top stars. So I don't get excited about the Elijah Open Challenge. Now we got the System. I'm sorry. Let's see. There's a trios match: Fatal Influence versus Rosemary, who just turned babyface again, Laying Lee, and Zaya Brookside. So there you go. That's on the countdown show. And now we get to the main card. We got the System, Edwards, Myers, and Dirty Dango taking on Ace Austin, Trey Miguel, Zachary Wentz. And in their corner will be X-Pac, Sean Waltman. And that's going to be pretty cool. I haven't seen him on television in a long time. So I like that he's going to be on there. So and they're in LA, so it's an easy drive for him. You know, they probably pay him in like, you know, like a dime bag or something. You know, he's just like happy to be there. A WWE legend. People forget that he also was a, you know, early days of TNA when he was probably in a different state of his life, but you know, former X Division champion, had a lot of matches with, you know, all the top X Division stars of that era, and specifically had like you know, some good matches with Jerry Lynn back in the day. So they did bring, so that was like early Asylum years. They did bring him back during the Hogan era, but he didn't last long because, you know, he just was not with it. But so it's gonna be kind of cool to see him there. You know, I obviously with Waltman there, you know, probably baby faces over on that one. Austin, Miguel, and Wentz. Will it be a good match? You know, the heels are good workers, but we'll see if they get time to do anything. I think it's gonna, you know, build up to X-Pac getting involved and hitting the Bronco Buster. So there you go. All right. Ultimate X, Moose, Casey Navarro, Leon Slater, Mid Cardona, El Hijo del Vikingo, and Sydney Cartwheel, backflip guy, Sydney Akeem. This is probably where they put the title on Leon Slater because they've been advertising that, you know, he wants to be the youngest TNA X Division champion of all time. And eventually he's no longer going to have that opportunity because he's going to age himself out. So they might as well pull the plug on it. He loses every fucking week. So they're trying to build this kid by beating him, but because he's a young up and coming talent, like it's fine. And he's losing to a lot of veterans. I think that right now is probably the time to pull the trigger, and then he can go back and all the guys that have been beating him, you know, and not that I want to see him versus JDC anymore, but you know, he's got to get his win back over JDC, Brian Myers. That's conventional wisdom booking. I don't know that TNA is that smart. I don't know that they know how to book like that, or if they're trying to do this on purpose. So we'll see. I don't really have a whole lot of respect for Delirious' like booking ability, but ideally, like he wins the Ultimate X and then he goes on. He should defeat Moose at some point, like one-on-one, and then, you know, defeat Eddie, Myers, and JDC, who've all beaten him in singles matches. He should get his revenge on those guys. That's what I'm thinking. But I could also see Vikingo winning the title here, especially now that WWE owns AAA. Vikingo works for WWE now, and I could see them wanting to put the title on him, and then him taking that title to When Worlds Collide in June. That way, they at least get their name on that show somehow, because they have not been invited to that dance, and they really like to be a part of that stuff. So I could see that too. I would go with Leon, but I wouldn't discount Vikingo taking the title here. Already talked about the 6-1 match. All right, Mike Santana, Mustafa Ali. This is the best storyline going in pro wrestling right now, as far as like in-depth storytelling, performance, just like production. Like the production of this story has been well done with the AA meetings and, you know, the kidnappings and all this stuff. I think this is like the best thing going in pro wrestling. It's really one of the few things keeping my attention on the show right now. Because a lot of times, like they got these feuds where people are just like bumping into each other, right? For the most part. But these guys are going in depth of this stuff. And Mustafa Ali is a giant piece of shit, right? He is like the only guy that has like legitimate heel heat in the company, doing dastardly deeds with Mike Santana. And both of these guys, their promo abilities are off the charts. Both of them can go in the ring. I get the feeling this is a world title match down the road. Mike Santana probably going to win here, but I think he's next in line for this TNA World Title. We all know Joe Hendry is leaving before the end of the year, right? Like, so I think my cat's going crazy. I think you know they're gonna have to pull the trigger on Santana, and then eventually get to another like a world title feud down the road between Santana and Ali, because both of these guys are doing some incredible work, probably the best work of their careers. So good stuff. TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Champ. I think Santana wins. TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Championship 4-way match. Ash by Elegance and Heather. The Metaphor. I don't know what the hell. Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson. Spitfire, and then Gigi Dolan and Tatum Paxley. So, like, there's an abundance of fucking NXT talent on the show. This is like a junior like level NXT show. So, I don't know who wins. Probably Dolan and Paxley. I'm gonna go Dolan and Paxley because who gives a shit? But probably one of them. All right. TNA International Championship. Steve Macklin versus Eric Young. Steve Macklin looks great with a title belt. I did not like that Unbreakable tournament. I thought it was a big whiff, a big fail. And I'll be honest, can anyone name me the last time Eric Young had a really good match? It's been a while. It has been a while. And it's like a good singles match. He's been doing a lot of tags. He had the match earlier this year with Josh Alexander. They just bombed. So I don't know. Like Steve Macklin in that 3-way, where they were getting like, this is boring chance in that main event, and people left before the main event in droves. Like, it was total embarrassment for the company. He, at least by the end of that match, did enough work to get the crowd that was left back into it. Can he pull something out of Eric Young at this stage in Eric Young's career? I don't know. But I have a lot of respect for both these guys. I just haven't seen Eric Young turn it on in a while, and maybe he will with this Macklin match, but we'll see. Eric Young just hasn't been in a good match for a long time. So I can't sit here and say and predict that this is going to be a good one because I need evidence. So I got my expectations low for this one. Despite the fact that Macklin is my guy, I think Macklin should retain here. He just got the title. I don't think they need to do to him what they did with the world title and flip it back to a heel. I think that you just keep Macklin the champion. I know they probably want this feud to go on for a little bit longer. This has been a good feud, by the way, as far as some of the promos that they've done and the acting that they've done. And I thought that this week on Impact, I thought their segment was really cool. So, but yeah, I'm gonna go Macklin on that one. TNA World Tag Team Championship, the Hardys versus the Nemeth brothers. They're not gonna do a goddamn thing in this match. like so the Hardys are gonna play the hits. Matt's gonna get beat up for a while, and then they're gonna do the big hot tag to Jeff. And Jeff's going to hit the Whisper in the Wind, and he's going to hit they're going to hit their double team move. I can't remember the one that injured Chris Bay. And then Jeff is going to hit the Swanton on Ryan, and we're going to send this one home because I don't see the Nemeth brothers having legs as champions. And I think they want to squeeze every ounce out of the Hardy brothers before, those guys' contract in later this year. What is interesting is the next pay-per-view or TNA Plus special is in Canada. Jeff can't go to Canada, so maybe they flip it to the Nemeth brothers here because Jeff can't go to Canada, so that would be something to look at, but we'll see. But I think they'll probably keep the titles on the Hardys. TNA Knockouts World Championship, Masha Slamovich versus Tessa Blanchard, probably going to be the best match of the night. Masha is going to really turn up the heat here. Her title run has not been great, but she hasn't really had great opponents. So this is her first time having a great opponent. And Tessa has looked really good in the ring. And people turn up the heat when they hit Tessa harder than they hit anybody else. Right. So for whatever reason, probably because they don't like her, but, and she lays it back in too. So you really got to crank it up a notch when you're working with Tessa. Because she'll fuck you up if you don't. So you got to earn your respect in there with Tessa. So, and Masha can go. She can really freaking go. She can flat out go. Both these ladies can go. I'm sure we'll get some racism chants, and that's fine. It's just what it is now. But I think Tessa wins here. And then I think the good news about that is that we're going to see a lot of people that don't watch TNA get really mad about that and tweet about it. And I think I'm going to laugh. So that's the good news. Right. But I expect that to be a really good match. Joe Hendry versus Frankie Kazarian versus Ethan Page in the main event. Not going to be very good. Probably 3 to 3.5 stars. Joe Hendry going to keep the title. I think they're building to Joe Hendry versus Elijah at some point down the road. So they're going to keep the belt on Hendry. Although I think a lot of people are ready for Hendry to drop the title because he's a geek But he is also the most popular guy in the company, next to Jeff Hardy, getting the biggest pop, selling the most merch, doing the best on socials. Like, the guy is insane. So, like, despite the fact that he's presented as a geek, he's the world heavyweight champion. And so I think he's going to keep the title, and he's going to pin Frankie Kazarian here. Some people out there are saying that they think that Frankie is going to get the title. So I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Dre says double Jeopardy match with pre-fat Callahan. Yeah, I think that would be the last like really good Eric Young match. I agree with that. So that was a good match. Hold up, EY and Macklin faced before and had a banger. How long ago was that, though? How long ago was that? Emergence 2024 in Kentucky. Okay, so it's been since last summer. I'll be honest, I don't remember the match, so might be worth revisiting. So if that was the last really good match, then we'll see. But I just have not been impressed with what Eric Young's been doing. So, but anyway, Rebellion should be a lot of people there. I can't see them predict a pay-per-view number because we just don't get the numbers. I think the people that want their opinions to be validated and their feelings to be validated about what Joe Hendry did at WrestleMania are going to assume that the number's not any good. but I would pump the brakes on that. I get the feeling that if, like, my opinion is when it comes to TNA, if the house is good, then they're doing a good job. We don't get the pay-per-view numbers, right? And we don't get the ratings anymore because Access doesn't do ratings. So it is what it is. But if you want to, if you don't have the data and you want to just make up that the whole thing flopped, you can make that argument because you don't have to prove yourself. so like, if you want to be like, well, what has it done for Access's ratings? Well, you can say that because you don't have to back it up with numbers, right? You don't have to. You can say the pay-per-view tanked because you don't have to provide any data to back up your opinion. You can just say it. And that's fine. Like, people are going to do that. Like, you're going to hear people say on their podcasts that this whole thing tanked because Access hasn't gone up in numbers and the pay-per-view numbers haven't gone up, but they can't provide you the numbers. So is what it is, right? So, and you could go crazy getting yourselves in arguments with these people, but you're going to end up talking over each other and nobody's going to change their mind or whatever. So the only thing I can base it off, and I try to just do reality-based type of perceptions, right, and arguments. If the house is good and it looks like it's going to be a good house, Dobby said 5,000. I'm anywhere between 3 to 5. I think is good. I think wins there. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of time left, so let's we'll go ahead. Oh, so one thing I wanted to make mention of. Okay. Alan Angels was let go. He was part of the recent releases that happened, or I guess his contract probably expired, but they just got rid of Hammerstone recently, and they just got rid of Alan Angels. That was announced earlier this week. I talked about it last week, but it hasn't really been made final. But I was under the opinion that Diener was on his way out as of May 1st, but I don't know if that's the case. He could always stay. But what we're seeing is that guys like Alan Angels, and look, I like Alan Angels. I thought he got a bad rap in AEW because he had that really good match with Kenny Omega, and people were mad at Omega for selling for Alan Angels, which I thought was preposterous. Omega was, a heel, right? And so, and then his contract ran out there, and they let him go, and he comes to TNA. He never really got over. And it seemed like every time they tried to do something different with him, it just didn't work. I thought he was a kind of a funny, lower card, annoying dude. And he was doing his mic check backstage, and I thought he was genuinely funny in those things, playing kind of a nerd. He was like a rock star guy. And he took some time off. He comes back, and then they tried to pair him up with Jake Christ and have a tag team there. I was interested in that tag team, although it never really made air. They were working them out, so maybe they didn't like what they saw. I do know that he ended up getting hurt at one point, and he had to miss some more time. But from what I gather, he does a really good job in Pro Wrestling Revolver and Prestige on the West Coast and some other indies. it just never came together for TNA television, and they just cut bait. And they're really quick to cut bait on these people because they got NXT people filling out the roster. You got what, 7 women from NXT on the show for Rebellion, 7 women, right? And you got Ethan Page. So there's 8 NXT talents on Rebellion coming up this week. So if you're wondering why TNA is not spending a lot of money on talent, there you go. Because they're being subsidized by NXT. So they're letting go of a lot of these people because they don't need to pay them anymore because NXT would just loan them talent, right? I think that's pretty fucking scummy, to be honest with you. So this partnership, while it has led to bigger business for TNA, less people have jobs because of it, right? They're not signing as many people because of it. Dobby corrects me as usual. He said, Angel's contract expired in December. And then Josh is here. He said, for fuck's sake, of course I catch the end. Hope you're well. Brother, you can rewind, dog. This is rewindable. Be kind, rewind, watch the whole show. Like, comment, and subscribe. Even though I'm going on hiatus, stick around. I'll probably be dipping into this YouTube every now and then. Okay, let's get to the go home show. Some of this was pretty good. A lot of it was pretty awful, to be honest with you. I don't know that they did anything to get people to want to buy this show. So I think they're just like, and that's like standard for TNA, for them to get the most exposure they've had in a long time and then present a product that nobody's going to want to watch. So you remember when Kenny Omega made his debut on TNA years ago, and they put out like one of the most god awful 2 hours of television you've ever seen in your life with the Wrestle House and other stuff. And they were like, oh, look, Kenny Omega can't do business. You can't do sustained business with Kenny Omega. It's like, did you guys watch the show? Like, look what you guys are presenting. So, like, if anything, if TNA goes downhill now, it has nothing to do with Joe Hendry getting squashed and RKO'd in 3 minutes. Is because they can't get it together. Like, they just don't know what they're doing. No matter who they put in charge, for whatever reason, they're addicting to blowing these opportunities, right? Or they're addicted to blowing these opportunities. Okay. So show opens up with Moose and JDC versus Trey Miguel and Ace Austin. Oh man, I'm getting the go home cue. So I got to burn through this Impact recap. So sorry guys, I'm gonna have to burn through it. And then Moose and JDC, Trey Miguel and Ace Austin, the system get the victory because of course they cheated like bastards, which ultimately leads them to recruit Sean Waltman to be in their corner. So there you go. And then Tommy Dreamer reminds Masha Slamovich to never doubt herself. So Masha Slamovich is in a bathroom with really poor sound acoustics, talking into the mirror, and mad about Tessa attacking Johnny Rods. And I thought this was pretty good, pretty effective. It went a little too long for my taste. I think these segments need to, be reduced, but I thought this was pretty good. I think Masha did a good job here. Tommy Dreamer ends up approaching her, says, never doubt yourself because the fans don't either. And then reminds her of who she was and talks about the history with Johnny Rods, because Johnny Rods trained Masha, trained Taz, trained Bubba Ray Dudley, trained Tommy Dreamer, a lot of people. So, all right, and then the show returns. We've got a video package for Rebellion, and then we see Mike Santana sitting in a circle. They're trying to create the illusion of an AA meeting, but they don't have the traditional AA stuff in the background. And then Mike introduced himself as not an alcoholic. I don't think that they want to disrespect AA meetings, so it was just like a circle. So I caught that. I noticed. I don't think anybody else caught that. But he went on to cut a really good promo. And he got me fired up for his match. So if one guy on this show got you fired up for Rebellion, and it was fucking Mike Santana. He is fantastic. But he brings up Mustafa Ali, a man who has made his presence felt in this room, talks about weakness. That's weakness. A man that can't face the truth. And he says, come to think of it, Ali is the true addict. He's addicted to Mike Santana. Says he looks at someone like me who has brought himself from the very bottom and rose, and that's going to keep rising. He's obsessed because he can't stand the fact that he can't control what's meant to be, the fact that I'm going to climb the ladder. I've said it once before, and anything I do it to be the best. He then began wrapping up, and he calmly spoke in speech. What's the definition of an addict? An addict, someone who cannot admit that they have a problem. And another great man once also said, sometimes you got to become a monster to fight the monsters in this world. And he said, at TNA Rebellion, Ali comes face to face with that monster. Ali comes face to face with the thing he can't stand. He's going to have no choice. He can't run this time. It's over. I'll make sure at TNA Rebellion I fight. Fighting is all I know. Fighting is all we know, and I'm going to keep fighting. That was fantastic. I think that Mike Santana should really get some like recognition for how great he is. Unfortunately, like TNA doesn't get the exposure unless they're losing in 3 minutes of WrestleMania, but Mike Santana is fantastic. And then the show returns and we go downhill. Heather by Elegance and Iceman and Maggie Lee are all backstage, and they do they FaceTime Ash, and she's pissed that they're stuck in a 4-way, and then anyway. So there you go. She's mad. And then we go to Fatal Influence. They make their way to the ring, and Ariana Grace joins Ray Walton Hennepin on commentary. She's got like no personality. Like her voice just doesn't carry. Anyway, Rosemary fights back and gets Jane on her shoulders. Nyx hops on the ring apron and helps JC Jane escape. Rosemary spears Nyx off the apron, but then turns around into a discus punch from Jane for the 1-2-3. And then, of course, the Fatal Influence hit the ring and then proceed to beat down Rosemary in a 3-on-1. And this continues until Zaya Brookside and Lei Ying Lee run out to make the save. And then Santino Marella makes his way out as Fatal Influence are retreating up the entrance ramp, and he says he wants to make an announcement. He says that Rebellion, Rosemary, Zaya Brookside, and Lei Ying Lee will be taking on Fatal Influence. So there you go. All right, so now we get to the Nemeth brothers. They're arriving at the Hardy compound. If they would have kept this thing to 3 minutes, this would have been like pretty fun. I am a Hardy compound guy. I enjoyed it back in 2016. I did not enjoy what they did in WWE. I thought that it was like overproduced and kind of like piss poor. I've liked some of the stuff they've done since they come back to TNA. I liked the first part of this. It went way too long. Way too long. This was like over 10 minutes. Now I'm not going to go back and time it, but it seemed like this thing just lasted forever, and they killed the joke, right? It's like one of those things like where the joke just keeps going and going and going, and at some point it gets old. The joke got old after the first few minutes. Had they stopped, they did the Jeff Hardy thing. So they pull up and they're confronted by Jeff Hardy dressed as Will-O the Wisp. And then in the background is a version of They Not Like Us. I don't think they had their real song. I think they did kind of like their own version of They Not Like Us. Like they made it different enough to where they can't get copyright. Although they did pay for a song. It was a Simple Plan song. God, what was the Perfect, that song? Like very like white boy emo shit from 20 years ago. But anyway, he's dancing to it, and then him and Nick Nemeth fight, and then Jeff Hardy goes through a couple of tables, and then Nick steals one of the title belts. He ends up going to the house, steals another title belt. He's trying to do like the Indiana Jones thing. I thought that was pretty funny, where like there's a belt in the case, and he's removing one belt, and he's going to replace it with a weight so nothing goes crazy. But as he does that, at the same time, Matt and Ryan are fighting. So this is where the whole thing goes off a cliff, right? Matt and Ryan are fighting in a pool, and Matt is drowning Ryan. And while he's drowning him, he's starting to have like his imagination goes wild. And all of a sudden he's like with Matt's kids. He sees Mr. Benjamin or Senor Benjamin. You got all kinds of wacky shit starts happening. And that's when they just completely lost me. And I think they lost everybody. They didn't have to go that far. Right. So this whole thing was just a complete miss. I'm not going to recap everything. I think you should watch it for yourself. I think they'll release a whole thing on Twitter and on YouTube, but I thought it was just completely whacked. The whole thing. Surprise, surprise. Io was entertained. He likes when Matt's kids get included. I like saying Matt's kids too. I think it was just too long. They should have done the thing in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That was it. Keep these things a little bit shorter. I don't think you guys have enough production values and enough good writers to be able to produce like a 15-minute mini movie, right? Because after a while, like Matt goes way too overboard with this shit. So, and then Tessa Blanchard is back inside, and she wrestles Misa Kate, Misa Jar Jar Kate, Misa Jar Jar Binks. Misa Kate got her fucking ass kicked. I don't know who she is, but they should sign her because they need talent. And I'm sick of seeing these NXT people all up and down the show. But after the match, Slamovich attacks Tessa from behind. She's pissed. I don't think they've done a good enough job of explaining to the audience that Tessa like hurt Johnny Rods. So I think they should hit that more. But Slamovich ends up staring down Blanchard on the ground and ringside as the theme hits to wrap up. And then they go to another like a filmed vignette. You got Steve Macklin writing into a journal by a fire, and Eric Young comes and sits next to him and they're drinking. Eric Young pours him a drink and hands it to him. Eric Young offers him one last opportunity to join the Northern Armory. Macklin turns him down, and they just talk about their match on Sunday. And then Macklin gets up to walk away, and then he passes out and collapses. You got that right, folks. Eric Young roofied Steve Macklin. He roofied the motherfucker. Macklin passes out, and then Eric Young took the journal and starts reading it. So I don't know. It's like I don't know if we should do like roofie stuff on wrestling TV, but I guess, hey, that's where we're at in 2025. But yeah, Macklin straight up got roofied. So there you go. And Young throws some pictures and notes into the fire. So that's the heat for the match. So I thought it was pretty well done, to be honest with you. I liked it. So I think Macklin could do like low level B action movies for real. I think he could. Okay. And then we go to the main event. I'll be honest, I'm not excited for the main event of Rebellion, but I can't lie. I always tell the truth. I liked this main event. I thought the match was actually pretty good. And I thought for the most part, it saved the show from like the first hour, which I thought was not very good. I thought this was actually a pretty good match. Here's the problem. Two problems. Okay. So Ethan Page essentially turns on Frankie Kazarian and leaves Frankie hanging. Joe Hendry was the babyface in the match. He's the top star. He's the guy they're building the company around. He's getting his ass beat the entire match. And he makes the hot tag to Elijah, and Elijah gets a pinfall over Frankie Kazarian. Frankie's got no momentum heading into the main event. And Joe Hendry's got no momentum other than the fact that he was just on WrestleMania. But they didn't know that at the time. So if I didn't know any better and I'm watching this match, I would think that Elijah was the top star and Elijah was the top babyface in the company. And that's the second time they've done that, where they build to a hot tag to Elijah and Elijah's coming in and getting the save. So I know we all see this coming to where Elijah is going to turn on Hendry eventually, and that's going to be the feud, which God help us. But there's also part of me that's like in the back of my head where it's like they might be setting up Elijah to be the next top star because they're already building him as the top babyface based off of the match layouts that they're doing. If you go back and just watch that match and forget the fact that Joe Hendry is the top star, who comes out of that looking the best? It's Elijah, right? Joe Hendry's selling a shoulder again, even though he didn't sell it at WrestleMania, right? He didn't wear his tape, or maybe forgot the tape at WrestleMania. Had no shoulder problems on WrestleMania, but he's back to having shoulder problems this week. You're probably going to be like, Mike, that was taped a month ago. I get it, but that's the problem, right? He should have sold the shoulder at WrestleMania. And then he's getting his ass beat the whole match, and Elijah gets the hot tag. Elijah runs wild. Elijah pins Frankie Kazarian. Elijah's not in the main event on Sunday. So I don't get it. I don't get the psychology. But that said, I thought it was a pretty good match. But they did not really do a good job of selling Rebellion for sure. But all right, guys. Hey, that was it for this week's episode of Brace for Impact. I do have to run. I want to thank everybody that supported the show over the years. Your support has meant a lot to me. This is not goodbye. This is see you later. We're going to be back eventually. Please continue to stay subscribed to the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel. I'm going to be trying to drop some content here and there as I get time. I might even upload some classic content just to keep the channel fresh. But we'll be back on Sunday with the Rebellion post show. That will be a Mike and JD Show themed episode. I'm hoping that JD is able to watch Rebellion and join me for the show. But last time his power went out, so you never know. He lives out in the fucking boondocks. So he's got that redneck internet. I don't know if he'll be able to do it, but if not, I'll just come on and I'll do another solo. I can go solo on that ass at any time. So I'm capable of that always. So, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting Brace for Impact over the years. I'm going to go on a 2-month hiatus. I have not taken that long. I've not taken a week off of covering TNA since 2021. So I'm taking 2 months off. So maybe even more. So we'll be back sometime around Slammiversary, and then we'll see what the company is looking like. I don't know. Maybe all the people that are doom and gloom, maybe they'll be right and TNA's out of business by then. I don't know. We'll see. But it's been real. You know what? Let's go out. Let's go out on a high note. Here is the classic Brace for Impact intro. And I say salute, salutations, enjoy Rebellion coming up this Sunday, and we'll see you on Sunday night. All right, and until next time, mahalo.